Well, we'll talk about the Vikings summer and the Vikings season and the schedule, and everything else, but we have to sadly start with the death of Khyree Jackson, 4th round draft pick, cornerback, and someone who, listen, it would be tragic that he died in the way he died at the age at which he died, no matter the circumstances, no matter his background. But he was also, John, somebody who quickly endeared himself to the fan base, the people in the building, because of who he was, because of the struggles he had in his career and the way he overcame them. Just crushing news to see a young man lose his life under these circumstances. Maryland State Police appear to be looking into the possibility that the people who crashed into the car in which he was riding were impaired by alcohol. It's just so damn sad.
It's terrible, Jim. Just awful. And yeah, we can talk in a minute about, his football future and where he was fitting in with the Vikings and all of that, because look, that's going to be a part of the conversation as they eventually move forward here. But first and foremost, I mean, you do just think about, everything that you heard about Khyree Jackson as a person, as a young man, was that he clearly did kind of go through a period of transition of trying to kind of find himself, certainly leaving football for a little bit, being a little aimless and working at the grocery store and things like that, but then eventually refocusing and achieving a dream that he had and that looked at one time lost. And I think that one thing that speaks to is just sort of the maturation process that so many young people go through. And it looked like, and it felt like to so many people with the Vikings, that this was a young man who was starting to figure out who he was and was really getting a foundation underneath him to go forward, just not, forget about the player, but just being a good human being and a great person. Like, you think about the life that was robbed. I mean, it was a son to his mother. It was, maybe a future father, a friend, all of those things. And it just seemed like this was a guy who was starting to figure things out, and things were just going in an upward trajectory for him on personal standpoint, certainly from a work and business standpoint as well. And to have it cut short like this, just as he was really getting himself together, I mean, just awful, because there's, so many of the players have put out on social media. Certainly I've talked to people behind the scenes at the Vikings who really just thought the world of him and was, he was a light up the room kind of a guy. It's just heartbreaking seems like an insufficient word for what happens with something so sudden and so tragic here. And I feel so much for his family, for the people who know him well, and let alone for the Vikings as they just were getting to know him and now have to try and move forward with a training camp and with everything else, just with such heavy hearts.
Yeah, and died with a couple of his high school teammates. It's just awful. It's the worst news you can imagine during a summer when, we do a podcast on the network with Jeff Diamond, former Vikings general manager, and he always talks about this is, there's training camp, there's regular season, there's free agency season, there's draft season. He said this is paranoia season. NFL executives just, they worry that bad things can happen during this time. I mean, this is an example of bad things can happen when you're not even doing anything, anything regrettable or wrong or putting yourself in a bad situation. The man's driving down, sitting in the passenger seat of a car, driving down a road and loses his life that way. So, our condolences to everybody. It's sad. It's crushing. We'll go on and talk about less important things here, but we definitely wanted to talk about Khyree and his life first. This is the Viking Update Show. This is one of our 2 football shows at TalkNorth.com, along with Jeff Diamond's show. He's John Krawczynski from The Athletic. I'm Jim Souhan from the Star Tribune. Our producer is Davide Rosso, and we're coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services Studios. best way to listen to the show or any show at the network. Please subscribe to your favorite podcast app. It's free. It's the easiest way to listen. And we will get to more mundane things. We're now we're coming from the Aquarius Home Services Studios. We're also sponsored by Twill in the Edina Galleria, where I recently had a really good time shopping, and TSR Injury Law, 612 TSR Time. Let's talk about, again, a more mundane subject, but something that we will all be talking about here for the coming months, maybe the coming years. The Vikings are entering a training camp with true quarterback intrigue for the first time in a long time. And it certainly looks like things are set up for Darnold to start and for McCarthy to work his way toward being a starter. Do you have any opinions or thoughts on, if that's the case, who the third quarterback should be on this roster?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question to sort of mull over because, I think I'm to a point where if there's two ways to look at this. So one is that you want for sure sort of like a veteran safety net as the third quarterback. So, if Darnold is hurt and McCarthy really struggles, that your season doesn't sort of go down the drain and you can kind of go to some sort of placeholder who is not going to just be such a disaster, and will be able to just at least get you into offense and do things the right way. But to me, the way that I look at it, I think, Jim, is that if you have to go to JJ McCarthy in his rookie season, things are probably not going ultra competitively the way that you want it to, because if it's just a matter of McCarthy won the starting job either in training camp or during the start of the year, hey, McCarthy's just the better quarterback, then you're sort of your third quarterback thing, I think, is rather moot, because you can just have Darnold be the backup as long as he's healthy and just get away with that, and that can be fine for you. And you let McCarthy go, and if he gets injured, then you just go to Darnold, and things should be okay. The question becomes then is if Darnold is your starter and McCarthy is your backup, do you need that veteran guy as the third quarterback, or do you just pick the best guy and go with it from there? Because that's where I'm at, Jim. I think you just got to let everyone compete for that spot and then pick the most talented player. And go with it that way, because if you're already going to McCarthy over Darnold because of some either injury or ineffectiveness, then any chances of real competing for wins in the division, kind of in the playoff picture, if you have to go to a third quarterback, is probably just not the priority. I mean, how many times are you going to get a Kurt Warner type story to play out? So I would just if you decide that it's going to be Darnold number one and McCarthy number two, then let those other guys go for the number three job and just take the best guy and just see if he develops, see what you get over him over the long term, because I don't think you need to really factor in wins and losses with that group anymore, because it just would the dynamics of your team would change to a great degree if it's Darnold and McCarthy are both unplayable for health or effectiveness reasons or anything else.
In a vacuum, would you rather have Mullins' ability to push the ball down the field, or Hall just be simply he's younger and there might be some possibility of development? Initially,
Jim, I probably would have said Hall because of A, the youth, B, I kind of liked his scrambling ability and his mobility, I guess, a little bit. And that's intriguing to me. But I have to admit that when we saw him last season, especially the second time around, it was, I don't know, man. I don't know what he does at an elite level that, it's kind of like in basketball, when you're looking at guys at the end of the bench, does he have one elite skill? Is he a shooter? Is he a defender? Is he a ball handler? Is it whatever it is? Is there one thing that he can do at a high level? I have not seen that yet of Hall. So I might lean at least a little toward Mullins just because I have seen him push it down the field. I have seen him take chances and make plays down the field. And that is one thing that you can kind of hang your hat on there a little bit. I don't know what you think about it.
Yeah, Hall really fooled me last year. I really didn't like much what I saw in preseason. Then I thought in the Atlanta game, I thought he played really well for a period of time. And to me, he looked composed. And then he had time. Then you would think that would be the perfect launching point for a young quarterback, that he gets to step back, learn from that experience, also have that confidence building experience. And I just thought he'd be even better the second time around. And he was unable to function second time around. That scares the heck out of me. So I would go with Mullins just because he might complete a pass downfield for you.
Yeah. And like the problem that I run into with Hall is I do think it may be unfair to judge just on that one game last season, where he just looked completely overwhelmed. But I also think that I was judging it too much on a very small sample size of like a drive and a half against Atlanta before he got hurt and Dobbs came in. And so I just didn't like, the sample size is not great on either side of it, but certainly there is more of a sample size, including the preseason, that make me look at it and say, I just don't really see much of it. So I guess in that respect, let him duke it out in this exhibition. Again, I hope that McCarthy gets some decent snaps in preseason, because of just the experience thing, and let him go. But let Hall and Mullins go at it in practice and in the exhibition season, and whoever has the better performance, maybe you give a leg up on. But I'm with you in terms of that loss, that performance just really hangs over me of just like, man, this guy looks like completely overwhelmed. Like this guy, I don't see where it calms down for him and where he can kind of steady himself and turn into a player. And so we have seen Mullins have a little bit of success. We haven't seen Hall, besides, just a very short time against Atlanta, have any success. And so I give a leg up to Mullins in that race right now.
Agreed. Hey, we are coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services Studios. We want to thank Aquarius Home Services.
Scott for Aquarius Home Services. Making your life better is a huge priority for us at Aquarius. It may start with providing worry-free water or heating and cooling systems you can trust, but there's another very important reason. Aquarius is family-owned and operated. We work hard to earn the right to be recommended. That means upfront, no-surprise pricing, providing a 5-star experience, and treating your home and time with respect. And knowing we're just a click away at AquariusHomeservices.com.
I also want to tell you that, I don't ask for anything free from our sponsors. I appreciate them sponsoring the network. I try to spend my money with our sponsors. So I went to Twill last week, wanted a pair of jeans. My old brand name jeans had worn out. And I walk in and the salesperson says, you want this brand, you want this size. He was absolutely right. I only had to try on one pair. They fit perfectly. Nicest jeans I've ever owned. My wife wanted me to get a pullover and a golf shirt for our upcoming vacation. I was out in like 10 minutes with stuff that fits me perfectly. And if something doesn't fit you perfectly, they'll make it fit, either through tailoring or finding just the right fit for you in the store. Scott Dayton only stocks brands he believes in, that he likes. He hand picks everything in the store. You can get everything from the finest Italian suits, custom made for you, to comfortable shoes, to golf shorts. It's fantastic. Twill in the Dining Gallery at twillmn.com. Sign up for their email notifications. They will not spam you. They'll just let you know when they have a special deal. Highly recommend the shop and the whole experience there. We also want to thank our friend Steve Terry and TSR Injury Law, sponsors of this show, sponsors of the John Krawczynski Show on the Timberwolves on this network. Great guy, great company. They have gotten a lot of money for deserving clients. They will not charge you unless they win your case, and they win a lot of cases. That's why you see billboards all over the city with Steve Terry hanging out with Naz Reid. It's a great alliance. We really enjoy that. So if you're ever injured, just remember 612-TSR-TIME, 612-TSR-TIME. Your colleague, Alec Lewis from The Athletic, wondered whether this might be the right time to trade Lewis Cine, former first-round draft pick who has not made any impact on the franchise. I certainly don't disagree that trading him would be a good idea. My question is, can you really get any value for him?
That is the big question. Because they basically have two options now. I mean, you can cut him. If they cut him, you're looking at like $7 million in dead money. If they wait to cut him until after this upcoming season, you're still looking at $3.5 million of dead money. Every team in the league knows that the Vikings are up against this. And so why would they be generous and take a problem off of their hands? The only thing that you do see that does happen sometimes is that you can see another team who might have liked Lewis Cine in the draft and thought, well, hey, he's had this catastrophic injury. Maybe this wasn't the right fit for him. First round draft pick. We'll give him a shot. We'll take a flyer on him for a 6th round pick or something like that. And give us a free look if another team is not in the same sort of salary cap crunch that the Vikings are in. It's just tight. It's just tight for them right now. And so there's a possibility of a team kind of just like, yeah, we'll take a look at it. Probably not. But just, I think, Jim, the fact that this question is being asked and we're all considering it really does, again, underscore what a difficult pick that was and how it just has not worked out. And I understand that you have to factor in that injury, no question about it. But even now, well removed from that injury, he has never looked like a player who belongs on the field. I mean, he can't even get on the field for special teams with the Vikings, let alone in a regular defense. And so it just kind of really does show what a big miss that was. It happens. Teams miss on picks all the time. But certainly Lewis Cine was a big miss, considering that they had to trade down and they could have had the Ravens safety who looks all world right now. It's just unfortunate because that's a big miss for Kwesi and his squad.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe we shouldn't belabor it, but we talk about everything else, and might as well talk about this. I think the most painful part of that was that they worked so hard to get to a point where they were going to draft Lewis. And, they said it would have been so much better off just taking the best player available to them at that pick. Instead, they traded down, tried to get extra assets. They worked really hard to make the wrong pick, which is different than just taking a guy you have ranked high and having him not work out.
Yep, exactly. So I don't anticipate a deal coming, but certainly I do think that it is something that they should explore if they can find a way to offload that, because they are going to, the other question is, if you do not trade him, do you keep him on the roster just to, kind of reduce the dead money cap hit and just kind of like slog through one more year? Or has he really become just a player that you cannot use and you're going to have to cut and tear the Band-Aid off? I think that's going to be an interesting thing to watch in training camp this season, and how they approach that and what he is able to do, and if he's able to even do the minimum required to say, all right, let's just keep him and let him play special teams and then, move on from him next year at a little less of a price.
I was looking at the Vikings schedule and trying to come up with a kind of a good way to analyze the Vikings situation going into the season. I'll ask this question of you, and you might, I'll give you time while I'm talking about it to call the schedule up so you can get a good look at it too. It's kind of a trick question. What's the most important 4-game stretch on the Vikings schedule in 2024? When you think about it, I will answer the question in my own way. Again, kind of a trick question. I really think because of the quarterback situation, I think it's the first 4 games. If they don't win against the Giants on the road, you're kind of falling behind the entire league in a tough and falling behind in a tough division. And then you got San Francisco, one of the best teams in football, Houston, probably one of the best teams in football, then at Green Bay against a really good up and coming young Packers team. Could be very easily, you could play pretty well and be 1-3 coming out of there. There's even the possibility because road openers are so weird. Remember that a really good Vikings team lost their opener against a bad San Francisco team in San Francisco during the Zimmer era. there's even the possibility of being 0-4, and all of a sudden you're asking, why aren't we just playing McCarthy and just kind of building for the future? So I don't know if you would look at that schedule and find a different 4-game stretch than that in terms of being a key to this season.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly see what you're saying there, and it makes a lot of sense. What I would say, just to, I think, for the sake of argument and to look at it in a little bit different way, I think what you said about the strength of that first 4 games, they could even play well and still be 1-3. I think that to me makes the next 4 the spot that I'm looking at: Jets, Lions at home, at the Rams, Colts at home, because that feels like where the rubber is going to meet the road in terms of like you said, you could come out of that first 4 and say, you know what, man, we played really well. We're just not quite up to the level of the Niners, Texans, and Packers. And we are 1-3. And because I don't think my expectations, at least personally, are not for this team to be on that level this season. I think that they're a year away from that. And so then you look at those next 4 games, which are still like, there's some tough games in there. I think the Jets are going to be good. I think the Lions at home are going to be tough. At Los Angeles Rams is going to be tough. And the Colts are, who knows? But that feels like where you're going to make the decision on, do we keep going forward with Sam Darnold as our quarterback, or do we shift gears, put McCarthy in, let him get a half of the season under his belt, and build toward the 2025 season? If like, I could see Darnold like just steadying himself after 4 games, playing decently against the Jets and Lions and Rams, and maybe you come out of that 4. Now you're, let's say 3-5. You're still not sunk. You're not in a great position, but it's not a disaster. And then you keep going forward with Darnold, or you could lose even more of those. Maybe you're 2-6, and then it's clear, okay, now any sort of illusions of, or ideas or designs that this team had of competing for a playoff spot in 2024 is out the window. And now we're going completely into future mode, development mode, and let's get McCarthy ready for next season. So I think that little stretch there, and whatever they come out of that first 8 games and where they're at, is probably going to be kind of the indicator of, yeah, you know what, Darnold's been good enough. We're going to hang in and we're going to just do, play professional football and see what happens, versus, yeah, this ain't working. McCarthy, go get him and take your lumps, and let's live to fight in 2025.
Another interesting bracket of games is they have 3 road games in a row: at Jacksonville, at Tennessee, at Chicago. We don't know how good those teams are going to be. Jacksonville should be good, but you never really know with them. Also, you add in the Thursday, October 24th game at Los Angeles. 4 road games in 5 weeks, and that's a burden. That's a tough thing to deal with.
Yeah, because I mean, you look at all that, and this is classic for that stretch. With when you're looking at it, like, I don't know how good Tennessee is going to be, but it always feels like the Vikings go into games like that on the road against a middling team, and that team just really plays well. I don't know how good Chicago is going to be. They never play well at Chicago. And so it's a dangerous stretch of games. Then coming into a 3 in a row at home of Arizona, Atlanta, Chicago, we'll see what happens there. But yeah, like, I think that is a very tricky situation there, because I think the Rams will be better. I think that Chicago is talented enough to be a challenge going into a road game there. And I think that Jacksonville, like I totally agree with you. They're hard to get your mind around, because I really like their talent. I think they're much better defensively. I think Trevor Lawrence is a quarterback that's improving every year, but who knows how they're all going to hold up at that point. That's middle of the season. But that's the place where, that is the stretch where it could really go off the rails if it's going poorly. Is like, okay, you lose all 3 of those road games, and it's sayonara on the season. So a lot is going to hinge on that stretch in terms of how ugly or how promising that season could be.
No doubt about it. Last topic for today. Once again, thanks to Aquarius Home Services, Twill in the Edina Galleria by Scott Dayton, and TSR Injury Law. 18-game regular season. We know we're headed there probably for pretty soon. Are you in favor or not?
No, I hate it. I think I'm not in favor of it because the players are not in favor of it. Anybody that you talk to that is even remotely candid and honest with you about the state of the game and about what their bodies go through does not want an 18th game. The only people that do want it are the owners who are going to make, a heck of a lot of money, and the fans who are going to just love to watch another game. So, I know that there's never enough money, that it's never, no amount of money is too much money, for the NFL, for any of these professional sports teams. But I just think it's a craven cash grab in an industry that is full of them. And I just don't think that any league that even tries to say it has the safety of the players in mind at all can have any leg to stand on by going to that 18th game. And yes, it's going to happen, but if you go into a locker room after a season is over, after a 16-game season was over, Jim, I bet 80% of the locker room was like, I'm going to retire. Like, I can't do this another season. Now their bodies heal up and they get back into it and they do it again the next season. But nobody feels good at the end of it. And so to add another game onto it is only going to make the product worse, even though it won't matter because fans will just watch. And it's going to put the players more in jeopardy of another injury. And I'm going to take their word for it when they say that they don't want it. And I think it's really unfortunate that that's the way it's going to go, but that's where we're headed.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I also wonder, even though it seems like NFL fans will watch anything at any time on any day or night, you do wonder if they ever get to a point where they dilute the product enough where it does hurt their ratings. Because there are now, with the Monday night game, the Sunday night game, the Thursday night game, there are Sunday afternoons where if like the Vikings are off or on a bye week or playing one of the night games, where I'll turn on the TV at noon on Sunday and go, I'm not going to watch Titans, Jaguar. I mean, there are games you just don't want to watch. And you wonder if stretching it out even more to 18 games, which will mean adding another bye week for teams, whether they really will get to a point where people just don't feel as compelled to watch every single week.
It's possible, Jim. It is. And I've started to wonder about it more, just like when we've seen the Thursday night games that have become a staple, and most of them are garbage. They're just not high quality games. A lot of times the opponents have not been good. But that it's a terrible product, but people still watch it. I do wonder what the breaking point is for this addiction that the country has with football. And I don't see the 18th game being that breaking point. It is such an ingrained part of the consciousness. The people need it. Fantasy football, gambling, all of those things. And like, I am with you, Jim, in terms of there are, on a Sunday when the Vikings are not playing, I mean, I'll watch the Sunday night game usually when I, after get the kids to bed and I'm just kind of relaxing from the weekend. But I'm not absorbing it. I'm not going out of my way to find games during the day. I'm looking at it as like, all right, we got a day off, like a Sunday off in the fall. Like, great, let's go do something with family or just enjoy it. But I think you and I are in the minority. Like, I really do. Like, I think that so many of the of football fans just literally cannot get enough football. And so there may be a point down the road where it does. Maybe it is the 18th game, and maybe it is, Monday and Christmas Day, and when it's on a Wednesday or Thursday or Friday, or maybe there's going to be too much of it. But I don't get the sense that we're close to that threshold yet. And so they're going to just keep pushing and pushing and grabbing money and until there's none left to grab. All
games are interesting if you have something riding on them, whether it's fantasy football or a bet. And that's a big part of the NFL success, I think. It's so easy to gamble on them. So easy to anticipate the games. We'll talk more about that next week. Actually, I'm going to be out of town for a while. John's going to be doing a show in my stead. I'll be back here shortly. We do appreciate everybody who listens. We appreciate Aquarius Home Services, Twilling Dining Galleria, TSR Injury Law, and our producer, Davide Rosso. So for John Krawczynski, this is the Viking Update Show, and we'll talk to you soon.